Hi again guys, and welcome to our very first tune setup for Gran Turismo Sport, and this tune setup is a combination of two things in particular. One, I'm not going to lie, is kind of pandering, because of course Porsches are all the rage on Gran Turismo Sport, people have wanted them on Gran Turismo for so long, so of course providing a Porsche tune setup is a logical step to do. However, this is about more than just pandering, because before I even thought of doing a tune just for the sake of it for a Porsche, I actually decided to use this car in one of the N400 driving missions. Because of course this car is N500 as standard, but as you can see I've reduced the power ratio on a level 1 setting, so you don't even need to upgrade this car in regard to weight or power, so you can do it straight off the bat. But by setting the power as low as possible, you can run it as an N400 car. And in one of the particular missions where you have to chase down, among others, a gold BMW M4 around the Dragon Trail circuit, this car dominates that event. Now, of course, I can't say whether it will dominate all N400 tracks, especially when you're going up against real drivers, but it at least showed the innate potential which the GT3 has in the N400 class, because I was in the lead by the end of the first lap. So, as far as this setup goes, as you can see, you want to have your power and your weight set as low as possible. The power is definite, obviously you have to get it into the class. I've got no traction control, but of course that varies from driver to driver. It's definitely better with it, but you know, it depends how professional you want to get, I guess. As far as tyres, of course that all depends on the scenario. Brake balance I haven't altered. Ride height I've set as low as possible to reduce the body roll as much as you can really and lower the centre of gravity. The frequency we've left on 2. Anti-roll I've got on 6 front and rear. The compression I've got on 55 front and rear. Rebound on 85 front and rear. With neutral camber. Again, that won't be for everyone. It is after all rear engine, rear wheel drive. So if you feel like you need some camber, there's no shame in that at all. These tunes, as with all of my setups, are specifically designed for people to modify them to their own preference. You are not supposed to copy exactly what I've done. You can if you want to, but that's not what they're for. These tunes are supposed to make you better as a tuner, not just to copy whatever I've done. Now, as far as the toe, again, I've gone for neutral. I would recommend that more so than camber. Camber comes in far more useful than toe, at least in my experience. Aerodynamics we've got default, because you can't adjust that. As far as the diff, again, it will be very much so down to personal preference. I've got the highest initial torque, which I know some people don't like, but for me that eliminates a lot of the oversteer and makes it a lot stiffer, which I personally like. We've got 20 on acceleration and decel, again, very much so open to personal driving style and interpretation. For the gearbox, you want the fully customised gearbox. Auto setting, I've gone for 180, then individual gear ratios of 2.7, 2.1, 1.7, 1.4, 1.2, 1.062 and 0.950 with a final drive of 4. Now you could go up to 4.1 really on the final drive if you want to, or of course change any of the others, but this tune is more so about the handling rather than the straight line speed, because as far as N400 cars go, the speed on this 911 really does take care of itself. You don't need to worry about straight line performance at all. This thing can beat almost all other N400 cars in a straight line, especially mid-range and top end, because that's the great thing about Porsches. Even the roofs on Gran Turismo games of days gone by go to show that. They often don't have as much power as their rivals, but they're often just as quick and sometimes even quicker. That definitely goes for this car. So that's it for the setup. And of course, I always encourage you to swap things around, try things even just for the sake of it. But of course, to test the car, let's actually take it out on a track. Now, of course, overall, not only with regard to this tune, but with the car in general, a Porsche is not going to be to everyone's liking. This is not a beginner's tune. I would not recommend this car for beginners, especially if Gran Turismo Sport is your first ever Gran Turismo game, because you will find it more difficult than some other vehicles. It doesn't have all-wheel drive, the engine is located behind the rear axle, which totally throws off the weight displacement compared to what you'd usually have in a typical performance car. So all of these things added together are not beginner friendly. However, if you're experienced with GT Sport, if you're experienced with driving roofs for instance, or even Porsches on other games, you know what you're getting yourself into, and if you're that kind of driver, Or maybe you are a beginner and you fancy a challenge. Obviously there's nothing wrong with that, it's the best way to improve yourself. Then this will give you very strong straight line performance anyway, and in a similar way to how I tune my muscle cars, the straight line speed takes care of itself, so focus more on the things which it isn't good at, such as handling. And that's the case with this tune. It improves the cornering ability, it does make it a bit stiffer, if anything a bit heavier, which as I said some people won't like, but the cornering is more controlled, more measured, and not quite as rabid as it could be quite easily on this car, especially with no driving aids. So overall, if you do decide to use this tune for the N400 Class 911, and incidentally, you could repurpose this if you want to. You could take it up to N5, N6. I don't think you can get it down to N3, but I'm not sure. But whatever class you want, of course, you can customize it to your needs. But overall, that's it for this particular tune, and of course you can stick around on the channel to see new tunes like this as soon as they're released. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.